Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm your host, Jakari Jackson. It is June 10th, 2016, and here's a look at our top stories.
Tonight, Americans have no right to carry concealed handguns outside of their homes. This, according to the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit, which has ruled in favor of California's good cause requirement, which means the end of the Second Amendment.
From my cold, dead hands.
Then, the city of Cleveland wants to ban Trump supporters outside of the Republican National Committee, a move that even the liberal ACLU says is unconstitutional. Plus, more from Bilderberg 2016, where water cannons are being prepared by Dresden police in case protesters get out of control. All that plus much more up next on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Well, here's another reason why you can't trust anybody when they say the science is settled. I mean, first of all, scientists obviously got it wrong by telling us all these years that there's only 2 genders. Clearly, according to Facebook, there's more than 40. But here's another instance. There's a scientific paper that was conducted in 2013 linking conservatives with psychoticism. And of course, when this came out, it was heavily published, and a lot of papers were kind of laughing about it. Look, conservatives are tied with authoritarianism, while social liberals are linked with social desirability. So this paper was called Correlation, Not Causation, the relationship between personality traits and political ideologies. It was released in October 2013. So here the paper was claiming that social liberals, they were linked with social desirability. Conservatives are authoritarian. The researchers had expected that conservatives were more likely to exhibit traits of psychoticism, which they defined as uncooperative, hostile, troublesome, and socially withdrawn, as well as manipulative. And so their initial findings reported on just that. They said, in line with our expectations, psychoticism is associated with social conservatism and conservative military attitudes. And they also went on to say that people with socially liberal ideas were more socially desirable. Well, it turns out 3 years later, the authors of the paper had to issue a correction because it turns out they mixed up the data in the code book. The data that they were using between their code book and what they were using in their original code book was switched around. And in fact, these results were the exact opposite. The study found that liberals were more associated with being uncooperative, hostile, troublesome, socially withdrawn, and manipulative. And it was actually the conservatives who were more socially desirable. Now, when contacted by the Washington Free Beacon, the authors of the paper said it was just a minor error in switching this around. So, of course, very minor detail there with labeling conservatives as psychotic. And in fact, it's the exact opposite. But if you've been watching the news lately, you already knew that.
And as Leanne pointed out in that report, if you need evidence that liberals are the true psychos, all you have to do is go out to these rallies, whether it's pro this or anti that. I've been to countless rallies, whether it's abortion rallies or anti-Trump rallies or whatever else. It's these liberals, a lot of them college students, communists, socialists or whatever. They come out there, they're yelling at old people, trying to shove old men in the streets, smashing eggs into girls' faces, burning flags, throwing barricades at cops, throwing rocks at each other. That's the true psycho behavior. But as you talk about how they want to say that conservatives are the ones with mental illness, they also bring this up when it comes to firearms, to the Second Amendment. And oftentimes when they talk about the Second Amendment, I hear this argument, if you own a firearm, you're responsible for the deaths of the kids who die in school shootings, or you're responsible for the latest liquor store robbery or bank robbery. And to that I was like, do you drink? And they say, yeah, I have a glass of wine or a bottle of beer when I'm watching the game. I'm like, okay, with that same mentality that you just placed on me, I don't drink. So it's easy for me to pull out all the crime statistics when it comes to alcohol and try to ban something I don't participate in. So I say, okay, drinker, the fact that you have a bottle of wine or a 6-pack of beer makes you responsible for the next drunk driving incident. They say, no, you can't do that. I'm a responsible drinker. I have a bottle of wine with dinner, or I have a beer while I'm watching the game. I didn't go out there and drunk drive and kill somebody. I'm like, oh, you didn't? So my shotgun that sits in my closet hasn't killed anybody. So how am I responsible, using your logic, if you're not responsible for your activities? And this is the type of liberal logic that they put out there because they don't participate in the act of firearm ownership. Everybody else is collectively guilty. Even though if something was to happen, if somebody kicked in their door at 3 o'clock in the morning, they're not going to call the ambulance. They're not going to call the fireman. They're going to call the police officer. Why? Because the police officer shows up with a gun. That's why I have a shotgun in my closet. But let's say you're out in public and you don't have some big shotgun on you. You have to have a concealed carry permit if you choose to do so. I'm not running a campaign to put a firearm in every waistband in America, but I do believe if you are applying by your state and local laws and they say you can have a firearm, I have no issue with that. But now we see this, the Ninth Circuit. Americans have no right to concealed carry a gun outside of the home. And this is the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit is ruling in favor of California's good cause requirement, saying the Second Amendment does not protect the right to carry a concealed gun in public. Now, this is the issue with this law. They say that you need a good cause meaning if you have a documented stalker or a rapist or somebody who's after you, they consider that to be a good cause because you may be attacked that day. But let me put it to you like this. If you have a spare tire in your car, you don't just put it in the days you think you may get a flat tire, right? You may occasionally take it out if you have to move or you need some additional space in your vehicle, but most of the times you leave it there, you forget about it, and it's there if you need it. The same thing if you choose to carry a firearm. You don't know the day you're going to be attacked or raped or mugged or whatever else somebody tries to shove you into a van. That's why you have the option to carry it on you at all times. And that's really what it's about. It's not about hunting. It's not about protecting your house at 3 in the morning. While those are included in that, it's the Second Amendment as a whole. You have the right to defend yourself and your loved ones, especially for people who live out in rural communities and they don't have the cops to be there all the time. Let's say you're out somewhere out deep in the sticks doing whatever your business is and somebody tries to rob you, it's going to take the cops, 45 minutes to come and get you. Some of these very small police offices and sheriff's departments only have a handful of officers and it's a very large county. You need the ability to defend yourself. That's why I strongly disagree with this Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Hopefully this will be overturned and it won't go too much further than what it is. But to say that you need to present evidence to them that you are in danger, that's ridiculous. That's like saying we only need a lifeguard on Saturday or Sunday because those are the only days we suspect some kid may drown in the pool. You need the lifeguard every single day because you never know who's going to be there. But that's enough on that, and we'll definitely have an eye on this as things continue. Now, one thing that has the eye of the nation is the case of the Stanford rapist. Now, for you guys who may not have heard about this, I'm sure it's just a very small number. Somebody's been convicted of raping an unconscious woman outside a fraternity house, and then he lied to the judge and told him that he had little experience partying prior to his arrival on campus. And it's not, my point with this article isn't so much was his sentence too light or too heavy. I think with the condition they said with good behavior, he could be out in 3 months. Personally, I think that is very, very, very lax, very light. But really the point I want to make with this is the lack of accountability. Once again, as we talk about a lot of these college students, a lot of these leftists, and once again, I'm not knocking all college students. There's a very liberal logic there, and a lot of people will grow out of that. But in the meantime, this guy is saying it's party culture that caused him to rape this unfortunate young lady. And it's this lack of accountability, just like I referenced earlier, whether it's people going out and rioting or doing other type of things. I'm mad at person X, so I'm gonna go out here and do something negative that has nothing to do with person X. I go to a school where people are partying and I feel like raping this girl, so that's what I'm gonna do. This is what this guy had the logic to do. It's completely ridiculous. The guy needs to be held accountable for his actions, and you can't just blame society for everything else. I just don't know how somebody justifies this. Even if he just wanted to get out of jail, I don't know how he could go in front of a stand in front of this girl's family and say these words out loud. It's completely ridiculous, and hopefully this will bring somewhat of a bellwether where we start to talk about these things and take these things a little more serious, because there have been numerous examples of people who did serious crimes or similar crimes that got much stiffer penalties. You can find examples of nonviolent drug offenders who got much stiffer penalties than what this guy did. So that's just one thing for the mind as we continue through the week and onto the weekend. Now, let's completely shift gears and talk about Mrs. Clinton. Now, Mrs. Clinton, people keep saying she's making history, and I do agree. To my knowledge, this is the first presidential nominee to go into the race who is being openly investigated by the FBI. So that I do believe she is making history in that. But a lot of people have this misnomer that she's making history for another reason, being the first female nominee of a party, and that is not true at all. There are even recent examples like Cynthia McKinney and Jill Stein, but if you want to throw it way back in the time, let's take a look at just a few of the female presidential nominees throughout history. Victoria Woodhull of the Equal Rights Party, Belva Lockwood. Also, we have Gracie Allen of the Surprise Party, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So once again, if you think seeing Hillary in that spot is good for you, fine. If you just want to see that, if you want to celebrate that, that's your business. But at the end of the day, she is not the first. She will likely not be the last. So just get over that. That is not making history. And then they try to spin it, and it's like, oh, well, she's the first nominee in a major party. I'm like, okay, so the other political parties don't matter because who says? You know, I think the Libertarian Party is just as important as the Republicans and Democrats. They may not have the big donors and everything, and they may have done some stuff recently that I'm not a big fan of, but I think they're just as important as the Republicans and Democrats, even though they don't get as much publicity. And somebody who's getting a lot of publicity right now is Mark Cuban, the outspoken owner of the Dallas Mavericks, has said that he is willing to be a VP for either candidate. And this is what he said: Washington has become so partisan and gridlock is so bad that you need somebody that doesn't have the legacy of baggage of one party or the other. I think that both candidates are severely deficient in technology. Hillary has her challenges with email, and that is quite the light statement. Donald Trump doesn't even use email. I don't think they have a strong grasp of technology, and that's what's going to drive our economy. I think I can bring that value to both. So, yeah, I do agree that they probably don't really understand technology. I don't think, speaking of one of Trump's policies, that we should have the government just build backdoors into our technology so they can supposedly find some terrorists someday. As I said earlier, referencing the San Bernardino shooters, Libertarian John McAfee, who was in the race at one time, publicly told the FBI how to hack into the phone on live TV. If you had your pen and pad and you got the step-by-step instructions, you could do the exact same thing that he was telling the FBI to do. But the FBI wanted to have this built-in technology, which some people were championing. I don't think that's the right way to go. And that's just one of many, many issues. Internet freedom, our power grid is severely linked in to the internet, so somebody could strategically shut down the power grid. There's a lot of different things that go along with technology, and of course the new laws that are going to be coming down the road that we don't even have a reference point for. For example, think about yourself back in, well, if you're around back in 1960, you couldn't even fathom the thought that you'd have a smartphone app and what you'd have to do to regulate that. You know, so that's just one type of thing that you'd have to deal with. Now, as I was speaking about Trump and his policies, at the end of the day, I support people's freedom of speech. I support people's Bill of Rights or whatever else. Also, that includes people's freedom of assembly. And now they're trying to somewhat censor Trump's rallies going into the RNC. Now, when you think about this, we've seen numerous instances of people coming out in the thousands to protest Trump. But now when people want to have a pro-Trump rally, they're giving them 24 hours to register. And this is Cleveland to ban Trump supporters outside of RNC. The city of Cleveland is attempting to suppress pro-Trump rallies during the Republican National Convention, a move that even the liberal ACLU calls unconstitutional. And as I said, they give you 24 hours to register for your free speech permit. And that's the issue I have, whether it's this rally that's coming up or what you see at the universities. They say, hey, you can have your free speech rally, your free speech zone way over there, away from anybody, away from the cameras, and your little dirt square, little mud square that we say that you can set up shop in. We don't want you to be too loud. We don't want you to use a megaphone. We don't want you to hand out flyers, give away stuff in the United States of America. We don't want you to do anything like that. And that is a suppression of the man's free speech, regardless of his politics. And they use that Hillary Clinton quote. I don't know if you guys saw that piece that Darren McBreen did the other day, where he had all these clips of all the talking heads saying the exact same talking point, the same line that regardless of Mrs. Clinton's politics, you have to observe the fact this is a historic moment. Like I said, she's being investigated by the FBI. I think that's pretty historic in and of itself. And as we're talking about demonstrations, usually what